King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima of the Netherlands find themselves at the center of a heated debate after their vacation in Greece, in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. This exclusive report delves behind the scenes of this controversial trip, from the outraged reactions to the consequences for the Dutch monarchy. A story of privilege, responsibility, and broken trust. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on the inner workings of royal families. Share this video if you found it captivating, and leave a comment to share your opinion on this affair that has shaken the Netherlands. An unexpected storm hit the Netherlands in October 2020, and it had nothing to do with the weather. While the entire world was battling a second wave of COVID-19, Dutch citizens saw their freedoms restricted, and calls for individual responsibility grew. King Willem-Alexander and Queen Maxima discreetly boarded a plane bound for their villa in Greece. A vacation departure that, in just a few hours, would turn into a national scandal. The context could not have been more sensitive. Since March 2020, the Netherlands, like the rest of Europe, had been hit hard by the pandemic. The Dutch government, in a cautious but firm approach, had introduced recommendations limiting non-essential travel. The Dutch were urged to stay home as much as possible, avoid travel abroad, and prioritize social distancing. In this climate of tension, collective fatigue and frustration, the royal couple's decision to fly to their second home in Greece was experienced as a betrayal. For this escapade wasn't just perceived as clumsy. It was seen as an affront to national solidarity. How could the king, supposed to embody unity, avoid the sacrifices demanded of his people? How was his trip more essential than the reunion of separated families, or the funerals of loved ones, where attendance was restricted beyond a certain number of people? The unease was immediate and viral. Within hours, the Dutch media seized on the story. Social media was ablaze. The headlines were unequivocal. The king on vacation during the crisis, Willem-Alexander flees the confined Netherlands, a disconnected king. Faced with mounting outrage, the royal couple had no choice but to turn back. The day after their arrival, they boarded a return flight to the Netherlands, visibly under pressure. But the damage was done. The image of a king close to his people, modern and accessible, had suddenly crumbled. Worse still, the hasty return didn't ease tensions, it only fueled them. For if the king returned so quickly, it was because he knew he had made a mistake. And if he knew, why had he left? In the days that followed, the monarchy attempted to regain control. A statement was issued, in which Willem-Alexander expressed his regret. He acknowledged that this trip was not a good idea, and that he had not wanted to betray the trust of the citizens. A sober statement, but one that was not enough to calm the shockwaves. Some members of parliament demanded more detailed explanations. Others went further, questioning the very role of the monarchy in times of crisis. Was it acceptable for a king, albeit a symbolic one, to behave like a tourist when the nation was suffering? The controversy exposed a deeper divide, that between institutions and citizens. King Willem-Alexander, popular for years for his simplicity and approachable image, saw his symbolic legitimacy seriously called into question for the first time. For the monarchy, while it no longer has executive power, still thrives on the support of the people. It is based on an invisible but essential moral contract. The king is there to set an example, to share the joys and sorrows of the country. Yet, in this unprecedented crisis, everyone was watching each other. Healthcare workers, teachers, shopkeepers, families. Everyone was monitoring the behavior of the elites, starting with the king. The fact that he chose to go on vacation while the rest of the country fought to survive was seen as a betrayal, an irreparable moral failing. Public opinion does not forgive perceived arrogance, much less apparent indifference. The international press was quick to report on the affair. From the London Times to Le Monde in France, to El País in Spain, the controversy spread across borders. Especially since the Dutch monarchy isn't the only one to have been criticized during this pandemic. In the United Kingdom, Prince Charles was singled out for retreating to his Scottish estate at the start of the lockdown. In Spain, the exiled former King Juan Carlos continued to be talked about for other reasons. Everywhere, crowned heads were called upon to set an example. And everywhere, the slightest mistake was magnified. What this affair reveals above all is the fragility of trust in times of crisis. The king may not have broken any laws, but he had breached an implicit expectation to remain committed to the effort of his people. In a society where transparency has become a fundamental requirement, the slightest misstep can become a media bombshell. And the monarchy, an institution founded on symbolism and respect, cannot afford to make mistakes. This crisis was also a revelation for the royal couple. Until then, Willem-Alexander and Maxima had formed an admired duo, often praised for their modernity and openness. The Netherlands considered them close and humane, reflecting the sober and discreet monarchy that contrasts with the splendor of other European courts. But the Greek affair branded them as privileged and out of touch with reality. In an attempt to regain trust, the royal family multiplied its symbolic gestures. Maxima intensified her social engagements, making frequent visits to hospitals, schools, and associations. The king, for his part, showed greater restraint, avoiding festive or frivolous appearances. The slow and difficult process of rebuilding the relationship began. For nothing is harder for a 1,000-year-old institution than piecing together the pieces of a damaged bond. Historians have pored over the affair, some comparing it to other tense episodes in Dutch royal history. Such as when Juliana, in the 1950s, saw her popularity falter after a mystical healer affair. Or when Beatrix was accused of authoritarian rule. But rarely has an image crisis been so swift, so violent, and, above all, so revealing of the gap that can open up between a monarchy and its time. The Dutch monarchy has nevertheless survived many trials. And perhaps it will emerge from this one stronger, more attentive, more humble. But it will not be able to ignore this warning sign. The world has changed. The pandemic has accelerated the transformation of mentalities. And royal figures are no longer untouchable. They must be accountable, set examples, share the sacrifices. Be there, not only during ceremonies, but also during the ordeal. Willem-Alexander, despite his apologies, will long bear the scars of this episode. Not because he flew to Greece, but because he was perceived as having shirked his responsibilities. In a modern democracy, even a king can no longer hide behind protocol. And you, do you think a monarch has the right to a vacation when his people are suffering?